You've got to love a good formula. In the scientific world, some formulas have changed history. In the financial world, one specific formula could change your life. I'm Wes Wood, the income guy and founder and president of Wood Financial Group. And for nearly 20 years, I've helped specialize in working with hardworking Tennesseans just like you reach their retirement goals through income-based financial strategies. And if you're looking for the right solutions to achieve your own financial goals, I can help. Just reach out to me at retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 during today's show or at any time. Okay, so maybe you don't know Newton's second law of motion, but you do know that it works. You see it every day in everything from your car engines to planes that are soaring overhead. Now, in math and science, a formula illustrates a complex truth. In the financial world, the not so complex truth about investing for income can be illustrated by Formula 2. And it looks like this. It stands for total return equals income plus growth. While it's not a formula that's going to power a jet engine or split an atom, it can help you achieve your retirement goals. And I'll show you just how on today's show. And don't worry, you don't need your TI-84 calculator to follow along. But what we're going to cover is how TI equals I plus G clears up several common myths when it comes to investing, and why the formula works so well once you've retired or you're nearing retirement, and what you need to do to make the formula work for you. And joining us on today's show again is David Scranton. And David is an investing for income specialist with over 30 years of experience. He's also a best-selling author and a television host. But before we get to Dave, let's break down the income formula and what it means in more detail. Now, there's a lot of myths when it comes to investing. One example is the stock market is always the best option for getting a good return. That is a myth. Another is that the terms growth and return are synonymous, and they're not. And our formula explains why. Again, total return is the sum of two things, income and growth, not just growth. To break it down further, growth comes in the form of capital appreciation, while income is measured in the form of interest and dividends. And for most of your working life, not knowing about this formula is kind of okay, because when you're in your 30s and your 40s and you're investing into your 401k, it doesn't matter much if you're thinking that growth and return are one and the same. At that age, you're still in the growth and accumulation time of life. Retirement is still a long way off, and your top priority is still to grow your savings so that by the time you get closer to retirement, you've got a lot of money that's been saved up. You want your return in the form of growth at this stage. So it makes sense investing in things like growth stocks and growth mutual funds. So you're totally focused on the G part of the formula. And the I part is almost irrelevant since you already have a source of income, which is your job at that time in life. Of course, you're also working to make sure to achieve a good growth return and make a good rate, as good as possible given market conditions, of course. But you're also aware that growth can sometimes turn into shrinkage when the markets do suffer a major correction. And we all remember those big corrections and how long it takes them to recover, like from 2000 to 2002 and 2007 to 2009, the big corrections. And if you were in your 30s and 40s back then, you're lucky. You were lucky because you still had time to recover from those losses. You had the time to regrow and continue saving and stay invested in those growth-based strategies. But if you were in your late 30s in 2013 when the stock market finally recovered from its last major correction, that means you're probably in your mid-50s by now. And it means you're starting to transition from the growth and accumulation stage of life to that next stage of life. And what might that stage be? Well, naturally, it's the income stage, the stage at where you need to start thinking about how to turn your savings into reliable retirement income. The stage where it's suddenly important to understand the formula. TR equals I plus G, how it works, and how to make it work for you. And I'm going to talk about more about that shortly in the show. And at any time and always, you can always learn more by visiting me at retiretv.com or by calling 855-776-0614 and request your free retirement income kit. But for now, let's welcome back David Scranton. David is the founder of Sound Income Strategies and the Retirement Income Store. Dave, thanks again for joining me again this week.
Great to be here, Wes. You know, you and I agree that this formula is very important, as is the transition, if you will, from growth to income at some stage. But why do you think that more advisors don't talk about this formula?
Yeah, well, Dave, I think it's a kind of an industry-wide problem. Many advisors maybe entered the business in the 80s and 90s and they had a great 15, 20 years in the stock market, but then we got stuck, or perhaps they've been invested since 2007 and we've had a pretty good run since 2009 at the bottom of the market, and they just have kind of equated that to get a return you've got to be invested for growth. But also many advisors may not work primarily with folks that are retired or in retirement and know how important it is to make this shift from growth to income, because perhaps they're just working with every client that comes through the door, even the youngest folks that could be in growth and weather the major corrections and dips and losses of the market because they have time to recover. So it happens throughout our industry, unfortunately.
So it might make sense to take a minute and explain to your viewers, how they can know when they're at the stage where they want to at least begin to make that transition from a growth to an income philosophy.
Yeah, and I've talked about it before on my shows, but it's normally what we call the transitional time of life, meaning you're 5-10 years or so from retirement. The kids are grown, out of the house, taking Social Security is kind of right around the corner, and you're really eyeing the finish line when it comes to work. You've saved up a good amount of money, but one thing we need to remember that shifting from growth to income, even if that is the right time, doesn't mean that you're going to be sacrificing returns. What it means is that now you're just focusing more on the I instead of the G. But typically it's that 5 to 10 years or so from retirement, and definitely if you've not made the shift and you're in retirement, you got to make it then for sure. Go from the growth to the income.
Good advice, Wes, as usual.
And Dave, hey, thanks for joining with us, and stay with us. We're going to talk to you a little bit more in just a bit, but coming up after the break, we'll explain why shifting your focus from growth to income at a certain age is, Mr. Spock might say, highly logical. We'll be right back.
A fiduciary is someone legally obligated to act in your best interest. Doctors, lawyers, and some financial advisors are fiduciaries, but not all. When you work with Wes Wood and his team at Wood Financial Group, you are working with fiduciaries. They help clients create customized investment portfolios based off their retirement goals. If you're ready to work with a fiduciary, visit retiretv.com and schedule a free, no-obligation conversation with Wes or a Wood Financial Group advisor.